Hi, Mochismo Eugene. Welcome to another video from Exit Strategy. Please like, subscribe, share, give a thumbs up for this video if you found it helpful. Pass it along if you believe someone else will benefit from it. I'd appreciate that. Well, today is Thursday, April 10th, 2025. And I just got back home about 12 midnight last night from Hartford, Connecticut. I went out to the young boys' Vigil, Candlelight Vigil in Hartford, Connecticut. Xavier Williams. I did upload a live stream. I think it was only 2 people in the live, but nonetheless, it was on the spur of the moment. I was videoing the whole endeavor and interaction with the people attending. As I first walked up to the first individual, happened to have been the dad. I asked him if he was the father, and he was. He didn't stick out or anything. He was just standing there with a couple of women, and somehow I just was drawn to him. So I gave him a hug, and I didn't think I would get that close to him just walking up. I didn't know that was him, but as fate had it, I did get to speak to him, shook his hand and hugged him, and I just told him I really do stand with him in this. And I did some video, but I won't upload that video because looking back at it and listening to it before I uploaded it, there was some conversation in there that I would not like to, I don't want to share it with other people. Not that it's bad or good. It was just conversation between me and him. And I also met Camille Williams, who was the woman that did the press conference, as to why I knew that there was such a vigil that was going to be taking place. She gave the location, the date. And so this was only days before I decided to go. I saw this press conference on my feed on YouTube. And again, a lot of the stuff that comes up on my feed, I don't look for it specifically. It normally catches my eye, and I'm drawn to it. And this was the situation with this, and I was drawn to it in a very strong way. And I was somewhat emotional when I was there. Within myself, standing there just listening to everyone or a couple of people speak about this kid. The father didn't speak at all on the mic. He didn't speak openly about anything. And, from all accounts, he seemed like, handling it well is an understatement, because at no time did I see any apparent grief. They're all West Indies descent. Most of the people there Jamaican. So in a way, that culture, I know from experience. I dated a girl who was Jamaican back in '93 before I met my first wife. And this is when I was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Point being, when you're in a group setting with Jamaicans, many times they handle their tragedy in different ways, in much different ways than a lot of Americans do. It's more celebration for them, and they grieve. They don't grieve so much openly a lot of times, like a lot of people are expecting most of us to do. So I didn't really overly observe him in that way, but I did observe that off and on the whole time I was there. He was more or less like a hostess of sorts. And to be cut off from your children 3 weeks prior to discovering that this is why you're being cut off from them. And I also read that this morning I read some information about him and the wife. He divorced her 2 years ago, I believe. He resided in Connecticut, and the boyfriend and the mother of the children, as well as the children, resided in Tavares, Florida. And so this is where this tragedy happened at. so I don't want to upload that video because it's just, I was interacting with a couple of people. There were names and stuff that were being divulged. There were states and locations, when you ask people where they're from. So that kind of stuff was being, just spoken about in there. And just a lot of things I just would rather just not upload it because of that. I did do the live, so there's all you need in that because it's similar, very similar to the video that I did. And so, minus all the voice, you hear speakers at the podium talking about the event itself. So that was mainly what I wanted to go for, to be just a support factor in that. And I did that. And afterwards we went inside to have something to eat, to which, I took a small plate of something from the buffet they served everyone as you walk by. And I stayed maybe 20 minutes, stood off next to a couple of guys and had small talk as we ate standing. It was a standing room only, which was good because it was packed. I think it's hard to imagine or do a head count, but it looked like at least about 400 people. I could be way off, but it was just a strong camaraderie. And that is very Jamaican populated in that little portion of Hartford, Connecticut. I didn't know that, but that particular West Indian Club is where they often meet for different occasions, and this one was no exception. And I got thinking, for a lot of the people, that would explain why it looked more or less like just a get-together of sorts, and it didn't really feel to me so much like it was a vigil. But of course, I've never been to vigils. I may have walked by a vigil or something like that, but I've never attended one. So my whole point to that is I really don't know how to really give my thoughts on that. But it was very, very nice. It was very very warm, and I've known that about Jamaican gatherings. They, being an outsider is what I'm speaking from, not of that culture, being of the same skin tone, and there were quite a handful of Caucasians there and whatnot, and you just got a sense that they had a lot of love and appreciation and respect for everybody there. No one was giving each other side eyes, and for that reason, it was a very warm situation, and it's something I like to see in a lot of settings. These individuals just they're just a big family. Everyone seems to have a lot of love for one another, especially being that they came from a culture and descending from, their descendants from Jamaica, and being in Connecticut, they have a long lineage of family members, friends, acquaintances that live within the area and surrounding areas, Massachusetts, whatnot. So that would explain why they're so close knitted. So that was very good to see. There was a train track right behind where we were standing out back, an Amtrak train track, and the thing came by so fast. It was so quiet. You didn't realize it was a train until it went by at probably 70 miles an hour. And so Camille Williams spoke. I didn't know that was her because her hair was different from that press conference, because I had seen her standing not far off from me. I would have went over and kind of like introduced myself, as to why I was there, because, I did want to give people an indication of kind of who I was and why I was there. And I think most of them knew why we were there, but just to let them know that, I was from an adjoining state or 2 states over, maybe 3. And I really wanted to make that trip to show my support. And the father did appreciate that. And they mentioned people from out of state, not by name. And they were aware that people in the outpouring of GoFundMe, and you saw that on the live, where Camille speaks about she just thanked everyone from the smallest to the largest. And she got a little bit emotional at the podium when she spoke about, she was there when he took his last breath. So I really had an enjoyable time under the circumstances. And I just wanted to share that with you guys and to let you know that I will be keeping up with this situation. It just is, I'm drawn to it. I don't know how to explain it other than that. I'm just drawn to it. And this is sort of like offbeat of what I generally discuss, but it's not, because this tragedy, I believe, stems from very psychotic disorders. And I believe, if I just had to speculate, that this boyfriend is probably the sole culprit of this satanic, psychotic, disordered behavior. In the whole way that he administered this type of abuse, it showed a deep-seated hostility and a hatred for someone else's child. And I also believe, even though they're both looking at the death penalty, the state is already, or investigators have already divulged that at the press conference. They didn't hold that a secret. You can go and look at that. They made it apparent that this is what they would be seeking. But I'd have you know that even though you can use the insanity plea, in court, but you can't use narcissistic personality disorder as a defense. And that's fortunate. But as she can, the mother, if she doesn't have a criminal record, and I'm just letting you guys know this before you get all bent out of shape if you don't know law and how our justice system seems to work sometimes. He may in fact be guilty and sentenced to death, as opposed to her, the mother. If she doesn't have a criminal record, I'm sure he has a paper trail of destruction. But with the mother, just let's say hypothetically that being from her culture, if she's West Indian, Jamaican descent, she may not have any criminal history. Her family members may even say that she doesn't even have a propensity to commit such a thing. It's just not in her character. They don't have any past instances where she was ever cruel to her children, probably never yelled at them. This is hypothetical, but even if she yelled at them, that would not be plausible, because that's in the human scheme of things. We've all yelled at our kids. But bigger point is, if she does not have anything in her past that would suggest that this is who she is or any of her MO, and she goes under the defense of abuse syndrome, even though that was a short-lived relationship. I think a couple of months she had only been dating this guy. But if she was vulnerable and traumatized by some of the things, battered wife syndrome, there are just so many umbrellas that she can go under. And if there's any indication of such things, her upbringing, her traumatic upbringing as a child, if there's someone to suggest that she came up in an abusive relationship, abusive home situation where her mother or her father was very aggressive towards her, all of these things could save her from the death penalty. Even though a lot of us would say she is equally responsible. Yeah, that may be factual, But how the justice system work, they take a lot of things into consideration before they determine a set of punishments. In most cases, some of the cases you shake your head like, Casey Anthony, and you say, how did she slip through the crack? As opposed to Jodi Arias, it was cut and dry, but it's the justice system that we sometimes we're perplexed about. But even more important, there are things that are happening that predate the circumstances of what these people end up doing. There's a forecast that us here as empaths and chosen ones, we know all too well. There's a forecast that a lot of people are not aware of. It goes unchecked. And we too, at times past, had no idea. We could not see this. We had no idea about this, called narcissistic personality disorder. And even though we know now how to identify, and a lot of times we spot it when other people can't. They look at the gruesome circumstances around, or the gruesome situation itself. And a lot of this stuff goes over the head of even prosecutors, judges, lawyers, psychologists. And that is the mysterious thing about our society. And it's really not a mystery, because there's a lot of things that play into why people miss this. A lot of times it's missed because we sensationalize the very act itself. And there's so many opinions about situations that occur, to the point where it seems like everybody wants to have the reason. They want to be the one that knows the reason. And we here at these at these platforms, we know that there's a common denominator surrounding all of this type of heinous behavior. And hopefully a lot of us content creators and voices who have experienced this are able to bring this thing to light. I know in many ways this is being shut down, it's being hushed away, it's being ushered out of the room, because this is the elephant in the room that people who are in question are not aware of themselves. The culprits are not aware of it themselves, but there are a lot of people in that room that have the power to make a difference. They too come to a point where they don't want to deal with this. They don't even want to imagine the idea of this. Once it's described, it causes anyone with a conscience or anyone with a mind to self-reflect. It would cause you to look inward for a moment. And for many of us, when it causes us to look within and start to question ourselves, to say, man, undeniably, some of this behavior is found in all of us. And what happens is, if you're not strong enough, or let me say this, if your mind is so weak where you run away from that reflection in order to try to see your way through this, you end up running away from the reality that some of this behavior may in fact be in some of all of our DNAs. So I guess what I'm saying, the people who tend to run away from this and dumb it down because they don't want to introspect, because they just don't want to imagine them possibly being this way. Even though they're not narcissists, they run from the very idea that some of this behavior may in fact have been exercised at one point or another in their life. And what they're doing is they are keeping it hush. And this is why God talks about a man who loses his life shall save his life. A man who saves his life shall lose it. And nothing speaks greater about us as human beings as to when the light is on someone else of suspicion, it is easy to talk about it. But when the light of introspection is on me, will I be able to talk about that? Will I be able to open my life up and talk about the undoneness, the unsettling things about me in order that I can grow? And that's what God was getting at. He wants you to be transparent as you possibly can. And if you can't, you find a way and a will to do so. Because what it does is it causes you to see things in a brand new way. It causes you to not be apprehensive and pick and choose. When it comes to certain things in life, you call an ace, a spade. You call it for what it is. And you're not afraid. Because a lot of times people don't want to talk about things that may cause them to look inward. And with this tragedy, we can all learn something from it, and we can learn something about ourselves. We can learn something about ourselves, how we parent. Have I ever gone overboard in my parenting? Have I ever lost it to the point where an accident could have happened with my children? Not to beat yourself up, but to look at this from a broad point of view and then come and narrow it down and where as it pertains to you and how you can better yourself and better the people around you, and not support the negligence that some of us all too well know that we can be more responsible about. So that being said, bless.